All right, I want to take some time again to go over the Cornell Notes rubric and make sure that everyone knows how to do this properly. There are several things that I've said over and over again in class that every time I say it, people go, "Oh, I didn't know that." But I have said it. You need to be paying attention. You should have the rubric in front of you when you're doing Cornell Notes. This rubric is copied right out of your syllabus. So you have this rubric in your syllabus. If you cannot find your syllabus, print another copy off of Google Classroom. If you go to classwork, it's down at the very bottom. There is a section there called General Information. That's where the syllabus is. There's also a copy of the reference tables if you lose those. And there is a link to the online textbook. So I've had people tell me I forgot my book at school, so I couldn't do my homework, but you can because the textbook is online as well. Also, all of the handouts that I've given you are also on Google Classroom. So I left my binder at school doesn't mean that you can't do your homework. You can always get access to that there. If you have a printer, great. If you don't, you can handwrite those answers on another sheet of paper. All right, but I do want to focus on the Cornell Notes right now. Again, this rubric is the same rubric we've been using since the beginning of the year with Cornell Notes. It is in your syllabus, and you should have it with you as you're doing the Cornell Notes, especially until you get to the point where you are confident with what you have been doing. So format, correct Cornell format, paper should be divided in half. Again, that half is not exactly half, but you should have 2 columns. Questions on the left, notes on the right, stapled and hole punched before class. Stapled together so that I have all pages of your Cornell Notes together, just like any assignment that you turn in, all the pages of it should be stapled together. Hole punched so that when you get them back, they can quickly go into your notebook in the proper tab for whatever unit we're doing so that they don't get lost. Some people have had the hole punches, but they've just ripped it out of their binder. That defeats the point of having the hole punches. Open the rings, pull it out, put it back in when you get it back. Again, it does not need to be special Cornell note paper. Loose leaf paper is fine. And if you're using loose leaf, then it's already hole punched for you because it comes with those holes in it. Questions. There's 2 sections for the question. One is for completeness. Every heading from the assigned reading has been written as a question. Every heading. The brown, some people are calling it red or rust colored, that's fine. But the brown headings, the big headings, and the teal headings. So also the little ones over here that are, whether you call that teal or blue, whatever you're calling that color, all of them need to be from the assigned reading has been written as a question. You are not trying to get the most questions for each heading. You are trying to come up with one good one. The appropriateness says they're appropriate and demonstrate the understanding of the main idea of each heading. So you don't have to actually include the words of the heading in your question if it doesn't make sense to. You can, obviously, but it needs to be summarizing the main idea of something. So a couple of interesting ones that I've gotten, for example, when we were talking about weathering and erosion, or specifically weathering, chemical weathering, there's a segment here, a heading called water. And I had people write the question, what is water? This section was not telling you what water is. It was telling you how does water play a part in chemical weathering. So again, we're using that term there, but what is followed by the heading sometimes is appropriate, sometimes it's not. This was not telling us what is water. Over here for the biological activity, it wasn't telling us what is biological activity per se. Now, biological, if we think about the word bio means life, this biological activity segment here was telling us how the biological activity affects rocks, or how do living things mechanically weather. So how do living things contribute to mechanical weathering is a wonderful question for this. It doesn't include the terms biological activity. You could say, how does biological activity contribute to mechanical weathering as well? But again, it doesn't have to necessarily include those exact words, but it does need to sum up what is the main point that the author is trying to get at in a particular section of writing. So every heading, the big ones, brown ones, and the little ones, the teal ones, have to be rewritten as a question, one question per heading, that tells me that you understand the main idea of what the author is trying to get across in that section. All important information needs to be bulleted in. All important information. It does not need every single detail, but the important information, and bulleted in. Don't use complete sentences. Some of you are simultaneously writing way more than you need to write, but not including all of the information, because you're rewriting 3 sentences that are basically stating the same thing 3 different ways. Shorten it into little words or phrases that get that main idea across, and then look at what are the other facts that the author is trying to get at. Next, we have annotation. All vocabulary terms and key ideas are appropriately indicated, whether they're highlighted, written in colored pencil, boxed in, etc. Something to make them jump out at you, so that when we're going over notes in class, and when you're trying to look up answers to questions as you're trying to do your homework, or when you're studying, you can find those important pieces of information really quickly. And then last, legibility and spacing. Notes are easily legible with sufficient white space, 3 blank lines below the last bullet point for each heading before you do the next question in the next segment of notes. Minimum. If you have big handwriting and you want to leave 5, that's fine, but leave at least 3. There will be things that you don't put in your notes that need to be there. You want to leave yourself room to add that. Sometimes it might just be something that you didn't pick out as a key point that I'm telling you in class is, but also our book doesn't have everything that we're talking about. So many times we're going to pull in other facts that your book maybe didn't mention, so I know you didn't have it in there. Or room for you to draw a picture that might help you with things. Or connections or examples that we talk about in class that can help make connections between things and help you to understand it better. Again, with this important information that you're doing, that can be pictures, diagrams as well. However it is that you can kind of sum up what the main idea is of whatever it is we're talking about. I'm not artistic, so I don't tend to use diagrams. Some of you are, and that is wonderful. You are not going to abbreviate things exactly the same way I do, and that's fine. Everyone's are going to look a little bit differently, because when you take it and you put it into your own words, your words are going to be different than someone else's, but you're all should have that same content in there. All right, so I want to take a look at 7.1. Now, before you start reading, you should be looking at the key questions and vocabulary words that are there. Again, those things need to be annotated, whether you write them in a different color or highlight them or something like that to make those jump out. So the key questions: what are the 2 types of glaciers? How do glaciers move? What distinguishes the various types of glacial drift? What landscape features do glaciers form? And describe the causes of the most recent ice age. Now, I did tell you on this one that you are stopping at landforms formed by glacial erosion. So you're not going to have anything dealing with the landforms formed by glacial erosion, the glacial deposition, marine outwash plains and kettles, all of this you are skipping. But those key points that go up through glacial erosion, you need to have included, and you need to have an annotation showing that these are the main ideas to help you find them. And then you know where in your notes you're going to be looking for that supporting evidence, the finer details about that stuff. And then vocabulary: ice age, glacier, snow line, valley glacier, abrasion, till, moraine, drumlin, and esker. Again, because I'm having you stop partway through this, you're not going to have all of those in there, but any that's mentioned in the parts that you're doing, you need to have those written down, you need to have them defined, and you need to have them, again, either highlighted or written in a different color or something to make them jump out. All right, so now we're going to do the first couple headings of 7.1 together. Now, first thing is you do need a heading on it. The official heading for Finney is your first and last name, teacher's name, / the course, and the period. Then the assignment title, this is 7.1 Cornell Notes, and the date that the assignment is due. If you write the date that you did it, that's fine. Officially for Finney, it should be the date it is due. Again, you don't need special paper for the Cornell Notes. I'm going to draw a line across here just since I don't have lined paper, and a line separating it into 2 columns. Again, I've got a little bit more on the notes side than I have on the questions side, because in general, I'm going to have more notes than I have questions. All right, then we're going to read through the portion of stuff for a heading at a time. That top paragraph doesn't have a heading with it. Usually it's not going to have any key information that needs to be noted, but it's going to kind of set the stage for what you're about to read. So this is: climate is a major factor in the processes that shape Earth's surface. In this lesson, you will learn about the strong link between climate and geology in studying how glaciers shape the land. So again, that's just an introductory paragraph. There's nothing really important information in there that's not kind of general knowledge. Essentially, we're about to read about glaciers. All right, so the first heading, types of glaciers. As recently as 15,000 years ago, Earth was coming out of an ice age. An ice age is a period of time when much of Earth's land is covered in glaciers. A glacier is a thick mass of ice that moves slowly over the land surface. About 15,000 years ago, up to 30% of Earth's land was covered by glaciers. In some areas, the glaciers were thousands of meters thick and covered entire continents. These massive glaciers shaped places such as Cape Cod, Long Island, and the Great Lakes. Today, glaciers still cover nearly 10% of Earth's land area. In these regions, they continue to sculpt the landscape. Glaciers originate on the land in places where more snow falls than melts. The snow line is the lowest elevation in a particular area that remains covered in snow all year. At the poles, snow line occurs at sea level. Closer to the equator, the snow line is near the top of tall mountains. Instead of completely melting away, snow above the snow line accumulates and compacts. The compressed snow first recrystallizes into coarse grains of ice. Further pressure from added snow above changes the coarse grains into interlocking crystals of glacial ice. A glacier appears to be motionless, but it's not. Sit beside a glacier for an hour and you may hear a sporadic chorus of creaks, cracks, and groans as gravity pulls the mass of ice slowly downhill. Just like running water, groundwater, wind, and waves, glaciers are dynamic agents of erosion. They accumulate, transport, and deposit sediment. Thus, glaciers are an important part of the rock cycle. There are two main types of glaciers: valley glaciers and ice sheets. All right, so in this section, we need to think about, okay, what is the author trying to get across here? This is really just a general overview of stuff. Types of glaciers, it tells me what an ice age is, what a glacier is, how glaciers form, the two types. Again, everybody's question might be slightly different, but this is, pretty much telling me how do glaciers form, what are the types of glaciers. So, what are the types of glaciers? Is my question. Don't write what are they, because you should be able to cover up your notes, and we have good short answer test questions over here. If I write on a test, what are they, you would have no way of answering that question. But if I asked you, what are the types of glaciers, you should be able to answer that. All right, so over on the notes side, we're going to look back over the reading and write down the main ideas. Again, you cannot just copy the definitions and stuff in bold and think that you have all of that important information. So I'm going to read back through this again. As recently as 15,000 years ago, Earth was coming out of an ice age. An ice age, that is a vocabulary word, so we do need that. An ice age is a period of time when much of Earth's land is covered by glaciers. So much of Earth covered in glaciers. Again, that is a vocabulary word, so I want to do something to make it stand out. I might highlight it. Highlight the term, not the definition, so that when I ask you what makes something an ice age, your eye is drawn to that actual word. A glacier, again, another vocabulary word. A glacier is a thick ice mass that moves slowly over land surface. So, thick ice moves slow. That tells me what a glacier is. Again, vocabulary word, I'm going to highlight it. About 15,000 years ago, up to 30% of Earth was covered by glaciers. In some areas, the glaciers were thousands of meters thick and covered entire continents. These massive glaciers shaped places such as Cape Cod, Long Island, and the Great Lakes. Today, glaciers cover nearly 10% of Earth's land area. In these regions, they continue to sculpt the land. So, I might write 15,000 years ago, 30% was covered by glaciers, thousands of meters thick, covered continents. Now, 10%. And we're going to write down they do sculpt or shape the land. Glaciers originate on land in places where more snow falls than melts. So they form on land. Snow falls is greater than snow melts. Now, I like math. I think in math symbols. So to me, snowfall greater than melt makes sense. You might word it a little bit differently. or draw it somehow or something like that, and that is fine. Snowline. We've got another vocabulary word. Snowline. Lowest elevation. Covered in snow all year. At poles, the snow line is at sea level. So poles, sea level. High altitudes. Sorry, at there you go. Where was it? Closer to the equator. Snow line is near the top of tall mountains. So equator. It's at high elevations or high altitudes. Instead of completely melting away, snow above the snow line accumulates and compacts. Thus, compressed snow recrystallizes into coarse grains of ice. Further pressure from added snow changes the coarse grains into interlocking glacial ice. So snow accumulates or gathers, or however you want to word that, and compacts. A glacier appears to be motionless, but it's not. Sit beside a glacier for an hour and you may hear a sporadic chorus of creaks, cracks, and groans as gravity pulls the mass of ice slowly downhill. Just like running water, groundwater, wind, waves, and glaciers are dynamic agents of erosion. They accumulate, transport, and deposit sediment. Thus, glaciers are an important part of the rock cycle. There are two main types of glaciers, valley glaciers and ice sheets. So they move slowly. They erode. And two types. Valley glaciers and ice sheets. Okay, so that is the main information from those couple paragraphs. Once you've finished and you reach another heading, you're going to stop. You're going to skip 3 lines. I'm going to leave the bottom of this page. And, well, I'm going to draw a line there. I've skipped 3 lines. I would be using lined paper. And then my next question for the heading and the next bit of information would go next. So your question should line up with the notes that you're taking from that heading. So question for the heading, notes for the heading, right next to each other.